Hey folks, Steve here with another Korean War video. In this video, we'll be looking at turn 4, which should be a pretty interesting one, as I believe this will be the turn, though it'll probably be the second half of it, that the Incheon landings will occur, and the first major pivot in the gain direction will occur. So if you're familiar with the Korean War and probably most games covering the Korean War, you have the North Koreans coming down the peninsula to here, and then eventually, due to the landings here and getting the North Koreans caught off guard, all the fighting sweeps north. Before then, there's Chinese intervention, and we kind of come back down. So these big swings, and we're just on the cusp of that first big swing. So I expect that to happen this turn. So there's going to be a lot of different actions that are probably going to be going on here that will be interesting to see. And I find myself a little caught off guard because as I was reading the game as history, I realized I've got my Marine unit over here really not in the best place, in my opinion, for what I'm going to need it to do. So there's going to be a little bit of a tricky bit here that we're going to have to keep in mind. I do want to call out that I did do victory points last video, but I didn't talk about them, so I didn't mention them. So the Allies are sitting at 23 victory points. They picked up 8, which is fewer than the 15. They lost a lot of victory points because of the sweep down to the west over here. So we'll go ahead and just get rolling pretty quickly. We're going to run through some basic stuff. The political phase, I will show very quickly. We'll come up here with our charts, and I'll just point out that there is one change following the historical track, which is that the U.S. mobilization goes up to level 2. That increases our destabilization by 2 points. So we're now at 25 instead of 23 when rolling on the chart. Mobilization going up to 2 is important because that allows us to have more consistent UN reconstitution, which is going to be really important to keep our guys alive. It also affects how much amphibious capacity that we'll have, which is going to be important, obviously, for any amphibious landings, which are going to be important this turn. So with that, we'll do our die roll. So our global tension, there are no modifiers that are going to apply other than a -1 because it's turn 4. We're on the 23 to 26 column still, and we'll roll, and that continues to be a 0. So our global tension has not increased, and we're done with that. And we'll do the air mission phase. So just to show here, there's a little bit of a dead pile of the North Koreans. Not all of those are full divisions, mind you. Some of those are replacement units. These were the air units we had before. We are going to get a whole boatload more in what is the G reinforcement package. So to show that quickly on camera, we're going to get a smattering of more sort of strategic interdiction bombers, as well as some more carrier air group type of units. Well, okay, they're not carrier air group. I don't know what I'm saying. Close air support, planes that are really much better for close air support. So we're gonna focus on that. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna just slam the North Korean supply situation interdiction. So we get a very high interdiction level, and we leave those North Korean depots with nothing to work with while we make our major landings or counteroffensives out of our little wonky Pusan perimeter that we have going. So give me a moment, and I will show you the allocations for air in just a second. I'm going to try to avoid that glare, and that might be the best position. So, all right, we'll be right back in a second. Okay, so here we are with the UN air phase allocations on the air theater map. So we've gotten basically very similar. I'm basically just adding the new reinforced units to the most obvious places. We have our kind of switch hitter unit, which is a 2-2. I could use it for either or. supporting the close air support, just because I want to make sure we don't have a nasty breakthrough that could cost us the game. So now our close air support level goes all the way up to a whopping 15, which is pretty great. That's pretty good. It should get us through all the combats needed to maintain the line and even provide some close air support to our naval invasion. If we can use air, I'll have to look at that. Then for the interdiction, I saw no reason not to try to do this, which is just throw in these guys, in here at an incredible margin. And actually, what I'll do, you can have up to 4 units. The math works out to be the same, but by having 4 units here, we do cause some road interdiction. And as soon as I find my road, there it is, I will put it in that province. So in the Huanghai province, there's restricted movement because there's 4 interdicting bombers. But what this is basically, 16 times 3 plus 12. It comes out to be 60. 60 interdiction on the column over here. So it's this column. And then I rolled quite high. I rolled an 8. And that leaves us with an interdiction value of 6, which is almost the highest that it can go. So when we go to start rolling for supply points, no matter what the North Korean rolls, it's going to be a -6. So they almost have to roll 9s to even get anything remotely appearing to be good supply, which means it's highly likely that the North Korean units across the map are going to be halved values. Very likely anyway. We'll see how the dice roll out. But the massive influx of air power is enough to just be totally annihilating the supply flow to all the North Korean units on the southern part of the peninsula. So feeling good about that for sure. And then I'll address a couple of things. We've got to do another FEC enhancement, which is good for the UN player. I'll show that in a moment. I just want to call out because it's the very next step after that the UN capacity track is now up to 2 because it's based on our mobilization level. So now that our US mobilization is up to level 2, we have our UN amphibious capacity at 2. And that is, it's a little confusing. If you look at the rule book, it's going to show you a chart if you're not playing the campaign game. But if you are playing the campaign game, which is what we're doing, it is directly tied to your mobilization. And I want to try to show. So it's here. It differentiates itself from some of the scenarios. I think the scenarios are giving you a little bit more slack to work with. But U.S. mobilization level, we're at 2. We get 2 UN amphibious capacity. So I made that change on the chart. It just means that we only get 2 amphibious actions this turn, and I suspect that I'm going to use them to, very likely use them to use one to evacuate this Marine regiment to the GHQ reserve box in the first action phase, and then in the second action phase, I will have used him to combine with other Marine regiments to form the Marine Division, which was what historically was done, and then use those guys to navally invade Incheon with our second amphibious capacity point. That's the idea. Okay. So with that done, I will go ahead and take care of FEC enhancement, and we'll start. I'll work my way through the reinforcements and deployments, and we'll do some of the supply stuff off camera because you guys have all seen that stuff and the processes, the procedures to do it in previous episodes. So to me, it doesn't make sense to record me doing that. We'll keep this video shorter by keeping things trim. So when I come back, we'll talk through the adjustments made. Okay, so we're entering the reinforcement phase for the first action phase, but I want to address a couple of things that do matter. So, starting this turn, before the North Korean player would be making their reinforcements or attempting to get Chinese intervention, the UN player can now decide if they want to declare that the nationalist Chinese intervene. If they do this, then they're going to get three units that they can bring in, and um, what this will mean is that uh, well, it's going to add more to the global tension die rolls. So if we were feeling like we couldn't hold the Pusan perimeter, we could basically say, hey, the nationalist Chinese who are on the island of Taiwan are going to come in. That would be useful because they would help defend the line. The cost is that it increases global tension. Now, the negative to some of this, if we say we're not going to do it, and I based on the size of the units that would be brought in, I don't think this happened historically. This is not a historical thing to bring them in, but I guess it's an option if we want to do it. Um, the other part of it is if we don't bring them in uh, now, we're not going to be able to if the communist player on turn 5 decides they can do this starting turn 5 to have the communist Chinese invade the island of Formosa. Um, so there's a whole set of these are the strategic elements of the game that start to come in. If the Chinese decide to do that, then there's some units that are going to not come in on the Chinese side um, when the communist Chinese intervene. So it's this optional thing. Say, well, you could have the Chinese invade Formosa, and then if you do that, when they do that, it is going to add to global tension, which I think the Chinese will want to do, but they're going to, the communists will want to do, but they're giving up some of the divisions that would come in when the Chinese intervene. So it's a choice. You basically get more global tension at the cost of some units, and then it's a question of whether or not the you want do you want more units on the board having a direct impact, or do you want fewer units on the board but having an indirect impact on the game by affecting global tension? So far, the global tension hasn't moved at all, which has been advantageous to the UN player. So you could say, well, maybe that gives them a little bit of extra room that they could afford to have that bonus to the global tension die rolls by having the nationalists intervene. But I don't know that we want to do it. If we do call in the nationalist Chinese, that will allow the communist player to start asking for Chinese intervention sooner than I think we will want them to, which means that the Chinese could enter sooner. They could have the Chinese headed south sooner. So I don't think for this game, I'm not going to have the nationalist Chinese intervene. Um, so we don't have early chances of communist Chinese intervention, and we're not going to negatively impact the global tension. If the communist Chinese decide to invade Formosa later, we will be able to handle that increase in the global tension die rolls and not have it double up with the volatility introduced by bringing in the Taiwan, nationalist Chinese units. Now I might regret that if these action phases go very well for the communists and we lose the game at Pusan, where maybe a couple of those divisions would save the game. But I think we have a better chance of holding the line at this point. I just need to get some units. I need to get the units to change their position a little bit, I think is going to be what the reality is. Um, to better defensive positions behind the river line and basically give up Kunchan. We're only going to need to do it in the first action phase because we are going to have our Incheon invasion set up very, very soon in my mind. So we'll see how it goes. So again, I wanted to explain that. It's in the playbook, so if you don't have this game and you're just kind of looking in, the description of all of this stuff is in the playbook. There's a whole section on the nationalist Chinese forces and the results of that. You can kind of read that there. And then how the communist Chinese forces and Soviets come in. You can see there's the Chinese invasion of Formosa, which does some things. And then for Chinese intervention, they start with limited intervention. There's a few cases that matter. So, case one is if we declared nationalist Chinese intervention and there's nobody north of 38th parallel, then the communists can start asking for help. If it is turn 4 or later, which is true, and we controlled Seoul and Pusan, which would be, I guess, after our Incheon landings and some more fighting, then that's when they can start asking, even if we've not gone beyond the 38th parallel. And then there's a separate condition that is just if we ever went above the 38th parallel, then they can start asking for help. The cases are a little bit different. So if it's just the first two cases, then a die roll of 7 or higher without modifiers means the Chinese will intervene. If it's condition 3, where we've gone over the border, then there are some die roll modifiers about positioning and what kinds of units are positioned where that will influence the die roll. And if the Chinese intervene, then they're going to get a certain number of units. The units with an asterisk there are the ones that would not show up if we invaded Formosa. And there's some more stuff here about full intervention and when that occurs, and then the possibility of Soviet intervention. I think for now that's still pretty far ahead, and we're not going to talk too much more about it until it's more relevant. But because these things all affect the decision that I'm making here, I wanted to explain that. So this is again our first opportunity that we could say, hey, we're going to bring in the nationalist Chinese. I'm going to elect to not do so. And then that brings us to the reinforcements. So I'm now going to again go off camera. I'm going to just take care of all of the reinforcement and the depot stuff, and we'll describe what happened there before the operation phase starts. Okay, here we are after the reinforcements. So to quickly summarize, the North Koreans did get one new division that is now in Pyongyang, and they'll start heading their way south here soon enough. And then for the depots, the North Koreans decided to concentrate their depot infrastructure. So we have a 3 depot here, and then the UN, has continued to do functionally the same thing. And actually, just I think for my own sanity, I'm going to pull this back a little bit. Yeah, just to make sure it's not that easy to smash into, and the chance that there's a breakthrough. But then in terms of the die roll, this is what really made it. The North Koreans rolled a 6, so -6 for interdiction, but that was still enough to get them 1 supply point. And then the UN actually rolled pretty poorly, and they got 1 supply point, which means both depots have a limited commitment marker on them, and functionally, it's a tie in terms of initiative. But unfortunately for the UN player, if there is a tie, the North Korean player has initiative. So while we were able to enjoy some action phases where the UN player had a bit of an edge and could react, much greater, the North Korean player has it this time. Now they're both going to be rolling on their initiative level 1 tables. So we're basically going to be bouncing between a small possibility that they'll get no activations per a phase or segment a go of the die roll, and it'll either be 1 unit activates or 2 units activate. And as I had illustrated in the last video, getting 2 is pretty important because you can use 1 to kind of snake around and create some Zoc trouble, and then use the other for an attack, or just kind of get things situated in such a way that you can put units out of supply and reduce their effectiveness quickly. So that ability to get, when you have higher initiative and more supplies, that ability to activate more units at once is actually super powerful because you can often do more than what the enemy could deal with, right? Like if you activate 3 units, you can have 3 units surround 1 unit, and that's really effective for being able to have those 3 activations do what you need them to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to run through the action phase. I think you guys have seen enough of the combat. I'm not going to do that on camera, but we'll come back and show the aftermath, and we'll start working towards the second action phase. Okay, hey guys, here we are after the first action phase, and things are looking quite dire for the UN, actually. I mean, it's... this broke through, and we even had a unit that was over here kind of sail down and actually get into Busan. The UN managed to force them out with their full-strength division, non-FEC division, due to these guys kind of being way out of command range. And they took Busan back, but they've also lost Masan, and we're actually awfully close to hitting a automatic victory condition if the North Koreans can get a couple more spaces. So it's actually really bad, like really bad for the UN. They are on the brink of losing at this point. They need to capture this city and this city, but they're basically right next door. Now, they've denuded a lot of their force to get down to this point. So you can see, I mean, these are 2 full-strength divisions right here and here. These guys have all been reduced, so it's a replacement 1, a replacement 2, a replacement 2, a replacement 1 here, but we had pulled back. This guy's still full strength, and so is this guy up here. So it's awfully bloody, but I think just in terms of positioning, it's coming out in the communist favor right now, and we've got some entrenching in Incheon. I don't know that the improved defense markers actually help against an amphibious invasion, but I guess we'll see. So really feeling rough for the UN. I mean, I could almost see this going and we having to restart to some degree. I think a lot of this is just due to bad positioning, especially if like you can get a full strength unit to attack a unit that's already gone and is fatigued, then they're going to hurt. They're going to be that much weaker. And if you can cut their supply, then they're even going to be worse off. And it's just been gnarly for the UN. So we've got a lot of units that are going into the eliminated pile, still kind of jumping around trying to get something going, but it is not looking very good. I'll say that much. Yeah, very, very difficult to see how exactly we're going to get out of this. So with that, we had some units eliminated, but fortunately their asset markers were able to go to the depot. So we're now at the asset reassignment segment, so we can provide some of these guys. So I'm going to give this division an asset, and then this guy's already got a couple. I think what I'll do is I'll give this to one of the guys up here. Actually, geez, we'll give him to this guy. Excuse me. Okay. So now we've got UN reconstitution segment. And so here's the couple of things that are different this turn than were the case for last turn. Given that we now have our mobilization went up a level, we now have a little bit more capability to do reconstitution. So the first thing we look at is if during this phase we have a replacement 2 or 1 unit on the map on its mobile side, that is, it was not activated, we may replace it with a stronger unit. And unfortunately, everything is activated. I made the choice with this guy to try to attack, and we did reduce the North Koreans here, but I gave up their ability to replenish, which I don't know. I mean, maybe that was a mistake, and then but I think given what's on the board, that's just the situation that we're in. So not much to say there. We do have destroyed units that are going to go through the process. So units in the available box. We're not going to have any. Shoot. So now every turn we're going to get, or every action phase, I should say, we're going to get to do this. But last turn we only got to do it once. So we have one regiment go into the available units. We have 3 units going into the reconstituting units. So we've got 3 U.S. regiments that are reconstituting. We're going to have one that will be available next action phase at this step. So again, things are looking, I'll say, pretty grim for the UN, but maybe we'll get something will happen here where we'll be able to hold on to our butts a little bit. I think the key thing is if the North Koreans can't get a good supply situation set up, then that's going to be the key. If they roll poorly and all their guys are going to attack at half strength, that may be just enough to survive and have the attack go on at Seoul to really screw things up for them. But it's going to be a near run thing. Yeesh. Okay, recovery segment, and then we'll have the marker segment, and we'll do the second action phase. So what I'll do here, guys, is I'll go take care of all the recovery, and then we will I'll take care of all the depot stuff, and I'll show the results of the depot actions before we continue on with the second action phase. Okay, here we are after the depot stuff is all done. So the North Koreans did manage, they rolled pretty high, managed to get 1 supply point, so they've got a limited commitment. The UN player rolled the exact same thing, but because they have a better supply situation overall, they were able to get 2 supply points, which they spent to get accelerated commitment. This is very key for them because it means they have initiative, they get to go first, and they're going to have to do something here to fix their situation because it is, again, very dire. If they were to lose initiative, and let's say the North Koreans just got enough actions, they could grab Taegu, maybe get into Kumcheon, and then that would be it. They would win. You don't need to take Busan. You do need to take several important cities is enough for a victory. So we are just at the hair's edge of the end of the game, but I think we're going to avoid it. In terms of reinforcements, the North Koreans got another division and an armor, which was put in Pyongyang. The South Koreans got nothing, and then the UN got this British brigade, which we put in Pusan, which it's allowed to sit 1 hex adjacent since it cannot stack with that full division there. And then we also got 2 Marine regiments, but because they're going into the GHQ reserve box, we were able to do some finagling here. I'm going to show that very quickly. We're basically going to do a build-up. A build-up can be done in the GHQ reserve box basically at any time, so as soon as we want, because the sort of logistical operations of doing that is removed from the battlefield in the peninsula itself, that these 3 Marine regiments are going to come off the board, and they will be replaced by this very potent Marine division. Super strong unit. Strongest unit, on the board. And he's going to have 2 armor assets alongside. And this is going to be our Incheon invasion force, I think, at this point. I think that's going to be the best thing that we've got going for us. We'll have to see how this goes in the next action phase. That will be when we do our invasion, but I need to figure out how that works. But just so you can see, I don't even think our first, unless we rolled really high and we got to activate like 3 units or something, we've got to spend, the UN has to spend its next couple of operations creating a circumstance where they will not automatically lose the game. That's basically what they have to do right off the bat, and it's difficult to see exactly how they're going to do that because it's going to be a defense around Taigu probably. We've already lost Masan, um, and like this, we might have to give up this city to hold on to this city and protect the line. I'm just not sure. I'm not sure how this is going to go. It's a very dicey situation, and we're going to have to shrink and create sort of a new line of defense effectively, to hold on. It's gonna be funky, guys. I'm not sure what's gonna happen. So let me take care of that. I will come back and we will do the amphibious invasion on camera, since that will be a new mechanic and a new experience. But I've got to see how these first couple of operations go, and we'll see where we're at that point. Okay, guys, dire straits, even worse, getting bad. um, so the North Koreans managed to get a very good roll at one point and could activate 2 units, which they used to destroy um, the depot that the UN had, which I kind of knew was possible. Um, yeah, yeah. Now the thing is, the depot can be replaced. It's not like we're like the depots are gone forever, but it does mean the rest of the units on the map are not going to be able to use the depot for anything because it's not there. So everything on the map is in deep trouble in terms of just supply capability and ability to operate, which could mean a total collapse at this point. But we still have an opportunity to do a naval invasion, and by gosh, I'm going to do it. So yeah, we're gonna try. And so we have I have things set up over here, so we're gonna go ahead and take care of it. And I want to cover this because if I have to restart the game, I at least want to show you guys how the amphibious invasion stuff works. So I have selected our Marine division. This is going to use our last amphibious capacity for the turn. We're using a division. These armor will not matter. Armor assets do not affect the amphibious landing, combat. I have them attached because I want this unit to have plenty of armor once we move past the beaches and start heading for Seoul. I want to have armor support, so this guy's coming in with what he can. Um, and so the way that this is going to work, it's considered an opposed landing, which means we're always going to use the combat values on the units themselves. So I'm going to spread this out so you guys can see. Um, and then the entrenchments do affect things. So there's a slight entrenchment there. We're going to use the clear line on the combat results table. And then we can use close air support, and I think we're going to. It's our last close air support point, so that's a +1. We also get a +2 due to the naval support that's inherent in the amphibious assault attempt. And it's not considered a normal, intensive, or all-out attack, so you don't get any other bonuses for that. Sort of the 2 naval support makes up for that, I guess. And that's what we're going to have. So when we look at the actual values, we have this full strength division and a garrison. So that's 9. And then we get a 50% bonus. So it's going to be effectively 14, which is this is going to be maybe a really bad time for everyone involved. Because if it were just 9, then we'd probably be okay. We'd be at like 2-to-1 odds. But because they get the bonus, it's going to effectively mean that our 26 to 14 is it's just a 1-to-1, which is going to be really rough. The other thing is the defenders can't do the defender option of taking a step loss instead of retreating. So if we at least force them to retreat, they will have to retreat. And any sort of D result should clear the garrison. So it's going to be a tough thing here. And if we fail, then we could have a problem. And then these guys are going to go back to the holding box. And then we'd be done with our amphibious assaults for the turn. So we might not lose a whole lot, but it's going to depend on how we go here. So rolling on the clear table, we're rolling on the 1-to-1 column. and we have a net +3 to our die roll. A net +3 to the die roll. And I don't think anything else is going to apply here, but let me double check. The normal -1 for a city does not apply because Incheon is a city, but that's not going to apply here. So I think it's just +2 from the naval support, +1 from the last of our close air support for the turn, and 1-1. So we'll see what we get. Oh, that's not good. So I rolled a 1. So 1 + 3 is a 4. Is an A1 result. So this guy is going to get knocked down to a replacement 2, and he's going to go back to the box. And we had a failed invasion of Incheon, which puts me in the mood to say that we may have to restart the campaign, because this is a total walkaway victory, or it's, well, I guess we're not quite there yet, guys, but it's looking rough. It is not looking good. So let me play through the rest of this, and we'll see what happens. Okay, hey guys, here we are after the rest of the action phase. The North Koreans failed to take the last city that they would really functionally need to take, which is right here, basically out of supply, out of command. The units there, we actually did get, during the reconstitution phase, a regiment that I could put in there, and I did, just to bolster its strength. They're under fortified markers. Basically, it's a massive siege, but I don't think they're going to last very long, ultimately. Also in the reconstitution, our Marine division that took a step loss gained another one, so it's back to full strength in the GHQ reserve box for another amphibious attempt in this next turn. But things are looking pretty grim. We have this division reduced over here, trying to just keep units away from Busan. We're entrenching. We're trying to put units out front, but we're really down low here. Now, what's going to happen over the course of these next couple of action phases going into next turn is the North Koreans can either take this city, and then if they do, and they can hold their position for 2 action phases, they win the game. If they can take Busan, and they can get a depot in command range of a captured Busan, they win the game. So there's kind of 2 paths of advance for the North Koreans at this point, despite the fact that they're hurting, and it's going to take a while. I forgot to move 1 unit, but I took care of that. So it's really not looking good. And when I look over at like the Seoul situation, we've got a division, we've got the garrison, we've got that reinforced division that came in this last action phase, and we've got a division in Seoul itself. So if we get the Marine division to take Incheon, it's basically going to be the Marine division against 3 North Korean divisions trying to find some way to push them back, and I'm having trouble figuring out if it's even conceivable for them to do this, or do we call it. And I guess I don't need to make the decision now, but I feel like this is really rough. The UN gained 5 more victory points for control of Busan and the Kumcheon city, so they're sitting at 28, which does not feel like a lot, and it definitely feels like they're going to have to come back. Like, coming back from where they're at is going to be very difficult. I think the root of this, and my mistake, and why we're not doing very well here is, early on, I tried to hold ground when I should not have done so, and that cost me. I could have had a better perimeter, more easily defended using the rivers and the terrain down here, and instead I just lost the South Koreans, which could have been formed up better. I just really lost my opportunity to just have better defense. So I think I'm considering restarting, guys. I do think, like, all things considered, the North Koreans performed well here. They did what they needed to do. What I could see happening here is basically, these guys continue to push. This guy comes down, and then this guy comes up, and there's basically a siege battle that goes on. Um, I feel like the Incheon landings is going to have a tough way to go. And if we had to, the North Koreans could always take one of these guys and send them down to reinforce. So it feels like we're in a really bad spot, all things considered. Um, there's just not enough oomph left. I'd have to go look at the reinforcements that would be coming in this next turn, which would be, basically a little bit of air power, a few divisions, some parachute guys, and then some more assets and a few regiments. But I don't know if that's going to be enough to survive, basically. What else we could do? We're going to have a few regiments coming back due to the reconstitution. There's probably a few other advantages that we're going to potentially get. There's some of what's coming, but I feel like we're just in a really tough spot. We're just in a really tough spot. And I'm having trouble figuring out where are we going to get the forces necessary to make a difference, and I'm just having trouble seeing it, guys. I'm just having trouble seeing it. So next turn we would get JKL, and yeah, it just feels like it's not going to be enough. It just feels like it's not going to be enough. So we'll see, guys. I'll think on it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do we call it for the North Koreans, and I set up maybe a different scenario so we have a chance to experience the rest of the game, or what? What we could do is we could say that, hey, this was a nice shot, but it went pear-shaped. Let's play some of the smaller scenarios that have different snapshots in time, so you guys can still see a lot of the different events that are included in this game, like Chinese intervention, all that. That's always an option here. That is an option. So we'll think on it, guys. Thanks for watching. Take care. Keep gaming.